So here we are again. Here's your good old Brian uncle with another story for you. This is a very unusual name. It's called Rumpelstiltskin. Very unusual. Okay? Rumpelstiltskin. So, well, to rumple something would be like to, you can crumple it and rumple it up. Still means no moving. Skin is skin. So he calls him Rumpelstiltskin. Very unusual name. There once was a miller who was very poor, but he had a beautiful daughter. One day it happened that he came to speak to the king, and to give himself importance, he said to him, I have a daughter who can spin straw into gold. Oh, like a spinning wheel. You see, there's the spinning wheel, and there she is sitting down with all the straw. The king said to the miller, that is a talent that pleases me well. I'd say it would too. If you knew you had a load of straw, only cows eat it and animals eat it, or donkeys lie in it, and you could turn it into gold. Good trick. If she be as skillful as you say, bring her tomorrow to the palace, and I will put her to the proof. He was going to check her out. When the girl was brought before the king, he led her into a room full of straw and gave her a wheel and a spindle and said, now set to work, and if by this time tomorrow this straw be not spun into gold, you shall die. Oh no. Then he locked the door and closed it. The poor girl sat down. She could not for the life of her think what to do, for she knew not how she could, the way to spin straw into gold, and she burst into tears. Suddenly the door opened, and a little man entered. Good evening, my pretty miller's daughter. Why are you weeping so bitterly? He asked. I must spin straw into gold, answered the girl, but I don't know how to do it. The little man said, what will you give me if I do it for you? My neckerchief, said the girl. He took the kerchief, sat down before the spinning wheel, and grind. 3 times he did the grind, and the spindle was full. Then he put another thread on, and grind. The second was full. So he spun until morning, when all the straw was spun, and all the spindles were full of gold. The king came at sunrise. He was up early, and was greatly astonished and overjoyed by the sight. But it only made his heart the more greedy for gold. Greed, you see, dangerous thing, greed. He put the miller's daughter into another room, a much larger room full of straw, and ordered her to spin it all in one night if life were dear to her. He wasn't a very nice king, was he? Like, if you don't turn the straw into gold, I'm going to kill you. Nasty. The poor girl began to weep. She was good at that. When once more the door flew open, the little man appeared and said, what will you give me if I spin this straw into gold? My ring from my finger, answered the girl. The little man took the ring, began to turn the wheel, and by the morning all the straw was spun into shining gold. The king was highly delighted when he saw it, but he was not yet satisfied. He put the girl into a larger room full of straw. Spin this during the night, and if you do, you shall be my wife. Don't know if I'd want to marry him. As soon as the girl was alone, the little man came in a third time and said, what will you give me if I again spin all this straw for you? I have nothing more to give you, she answered. Then promise, if you become queen, to give me your first child. Ooh. Who knows how that may be, or how things may turn out between now and then, thought the girl. But in her perplexity, that's a nice word, isn't it? Perplexity. In other words, she was very anxious. She could not help herself, so she promised the little man what he desired, and he spun all the straw into gold. When the king came in the next morning, he saw that his orders had been obeyed. He married the maiden, and the beautiful miller's daughter became a queen. After a year had passed, the queen had a lovely baby boy. There was great joy throughout the kingdom, and they were all happy. The little man was forgotten till one day he walked suddenly into the chamber and said, "Give me what you promised." The queen was frightened, and he offered the dwarf all the riches of the kingdom if he would only leave her the child. "No," he answered. "Something living is dearer to me than all the treasures of the world." He wasn't very nice, that guy. Then the queen began to grieve and weep so bitterly. Remember, she was very good at crying. And that the little man took pity on her and said, "I will give you 3 days. If in that time you can find out my name, you shall keep the child." All night long the queen thought over every name that she'd ever heard and sent a messenger through the kingdom to inquire what names were usually given to people in that country. Imagine a name like that, Rumpelstiltskin. Who would know that? When the next day the little man came back, she began with Casper, Melchior, Balthazar, and repeated each after each all the names she knew or that she'd ever heard of. But at each one the little man said, "That is not my name." The second day she again sent about in all directions, and she was asking people what they were called and repeated to the little man the strangest names which she'd never heard of or imagined. To each he answered, "That is not my name." The third day the messenger returned and said, "I have not been able to find a single new name, but I came over a high mountain by a wood where the fox and the hare bid each other good night. I saw a little hut, and before the hut burned a little fire, and around the fire danced a funny little man who hopped on one leg and sang, 'Today I brew, tomorrow I bake, next day the queen's child I shall take. How glad I am that nobody knows my name is Rumpelstiltskin.'" How joyful the queen was at hearing this. Soon after, the little man entered and said to the queen, "What is my name?" "Is your name Ichabod?" she asked mischievously. "No." "Is your name Carl?" "No." "Well then, you are not sometimes called Rumpelstiltskin?" "A witch had told you that. A witch has told you that," shrieked the little man, and he stamped around furiously, and then he made his way off and was never heard of again. Now, I hope you enjoyed that. Rumpelstiltskin.